Well, it's New Year's Eve, and before the countdown to midnight begins, we're doing our own countdown. Forget resolutions. Today, we're counting down the top 5 breakups of 2025. Now, this was the year that we stopped pretending certain people, countries, and institutions still deserved a free pass.
When we look back at 2025, we don't feel calmer, but we feel prouder. Not because this year was kind to Canadians, it wasn't, but because Canadians refused to disappear. We didn't just sit on the sidelines and tune out. We paid attention. We spoke up. We voted. We treated what was happening to our country like it was our responsibility.
And that's what really hits me. Canadians treated this country like something we're responsible for, not something we just complain about. People wrote their MPs, argued with family, dragged themselves to the polls when they were exhausted. You can disagree on parties and policies, but that effort, that makes us proud to be Canadian.
Last year wasn't just about resolutions. It was about resignations, cancellations, and Canada quietly hitting block collar on a few relationships. It was a year that Canada started walking away from bad deals, bad guests, and badly behaved national heroes.
So grab a coffee and settle in because this one is for anyone who hit "I'm done" at least once in 2025.
First up, Canada and Bourbon, or as Kentucky calls it, wait, where did our biggest customer go?
Now, let's remember the context here. Kentucky didn't just lean a little red. In 2024, Trump took about 64% of the vote there. Landslide, safe red, right? They backed him again, knowing exactly what his tariff chaos did the first time around.
And the bourbon industry was right there in the middle of it all. For years, they rode the America First wave. They loved the tax cuts. And then when Trump slapped tariffs on Canada, they acted shocked when we pushed back.
So how does Canada respond? Well, with provinces pulling American booze off the shelves. Manitoba, Ontario, BC, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Newfoundland, gone. No Jack Daniels and no Kentucky bourbon in government stores.
And what did the industry say? Well, the president of the Kentucky Distillers Association and the Jack Daniels parent company both called Canada's move disproportionate. They complained that we were overreacting and warned us about job losses. Well, basically, they were scolding the customer who'd just been slapped with tariffs and threatened with annexation.
That's what thumbing your nose at Canada looks like in the real world. You cheer on the guys starting the trade fight, then lecture the neighbor who refuses to just sit there and take it?
Fast forward a few months later, and the numbers hit hard. U.S. spirit exports to Canada plunged by 85% in the second quarter of 2025. Distillers' lobby groups were suddenly begging for zero tariffs and warning about irreparable harm to the industry.
And then comes the big headline. Jim Beam halts bourbon production at its main Claremont distillery for all of 2026. They blame overstocked warehouses, failing demand, and the uncertainty from Trump's tariff brinkmanship. Kentucky's sitting on more than 16 million barrels and getting hammered with state taxes on every single one of them.
In other words, Kentucky went all in on Trump. MAGA treated Canada like a punching bag. And now, our liquor stores are full of alternatives. Canadians have discovered we don't actually need Kentucky on the bar menu. And they're the ones turning off the stills and begging for our business back.
And that's the part that never gets said out loud in the US coverage. They talk about collateral damage, uncertainty, unfortunate consequences. But if you strip away the spin, it's simple. You can't mock Canada, threaten our economy, hint about annexing us, and still expect us to fund your barrel rooms.
So the breakup between Canada and Kentucky Bourbon in 2025 is the year the power flipped. They voted for the guy who put their industry on the chopping block. We voted with our wallets.
All right, on to the next one, and this one's personal. 2025 is the year that Canada finally admitted we're not in a healthy relationship with Wayne Gretzky anymore.
Yeah, let's rewind and share the year's greatest hits. Trump and Gretzky have been cozy for a long time now. There was the Christmas Day visit back in 2024 when Trump bragged on social media that he just had dinner with the Great One and told him that he should run for Prime Minister of Canada.
And then came the inauguration. In January, cameras pick him up in the Capitol watching Trump get sworn in, seated with the big donors and loyalists, not as some random hockey fan who wandered in, but as part of the inner VIP circle.
Before that, he spotted at Mar-a-Lago on the U.S. election night wearing a red hat like it's just another fun accessory, while Trump is literally talking about making Canada the 51st state and calling our prime minister governor.
So by the time 2025 rolls around, this isn't some mystery. Gretzky has made it clear who he's comfortable lending his face to.
Then we get to the Four Nations face-off final in Boston. He's introduced as honorary captain for Team Canada. Huge moment, national stage, Canada versus USA.
The U.S. honorary captain, Mike Yerzone, comes out in full American colors. Flag on display, the whole thing. Gretzky? It's in a plain blue suit. No Canada jersey, no red, not even a tiny maple leaf pin.
He enters through the U.S. bench, chats with the American players, gives them a thumbs up, and barely even looks at Team Canada. The building boos him. Traitor starts trending. People are asking, why is this man, of all people, why was he picked to represent us?
And you know what? Fans weren't reacting to just one thumbs up. They were reacting to a pattern. Dinner at Mar-a-Lago, inauguration seats, the MAGA hat, Trump publicly floating him as the leader of Canada while musing about annexing our country. And Gretzky just smiles and just goes along with it.
Meanwhile, back in Canada, his statue in Edmonton gets vandalized. Petitions to strip his name off Wayne Gretzky Parkway explode. His wine bottle signs are turned upside down in the liquor store, and columnists are writing pieces called "Wake Up, Canada! Wayne Gretzky is mega."
And what's his response? He goes on radio saying that he has no political power. He's not involved. He's just a sportsman. As if that erases the photos, the guest list, and the friends he keeps.
That's the part that really snapped people. You can't be Trump's Canadian mascot at Mar-a-Lago, accept the VIB treatment at the inauguration, shrug when he jokes about swallowing your country, and then act shocked and upset when Canadians question whose side you're on.
And no, I'm not going to stand here and claim that Wayne Gretzky is in any sealed files or secret logs, but he keeps choosing to stand beside a man who's up to his neck in that world.
And that's the breakup. Not that our hockey hero turned out to be conservative, not that he has American friends. It's that during a year when Trump was threatening our economy, mocking our sovereignty, and hanging out with the same small club of powerful men every survivor movement is pointing the finger at, Wayne Gretzky kept choosing that table over his country.
So, in 2025, a lot of Canadians quietly said, we're done. You picked your team, and we see it's not us.
Now, continuing our countdown at number 3, the moment King Charles showed us exactly where his priorities are. When he gets the chance to make history with a second state visit, he decides the guest of honor should be, of all people, Donald Trump.
Not just any guest. The man a New York jury found liable for sexual abuse and defamation, parked front and center in the royal photo op, seated beside Kate like he's some wholesome family friend.
And all this is happening while the Epstein files are still being picked apart, survivors are still waiting for real accountability, and the royal family's name keeps hanging over the whole thing like a big storm cloud. Call it diplomacy if you want, but from here it looks a lot like reputation management for a very small club of very powerful men who really would prefer that those files stay confusing, redacted, and buried in legalese.
And Canadians are watching this like, so let me get this straight. Our supposed head of state honors the guy who's been beating up on our economy, insulting our prime minister, and dangling our sovereignty like a bargaining chip?
That was the moment a lot of Canadians quietly broke up with the royal family. Not in a big dramatic announcement sort of way, but more like, yeah, we're not buying the commemorative plates anymore.
And for anyone saying, well, actually, this was Starmer, Charles had no choice. Come on. The invitation is issued in his name on royal letterhead with Windsor Castle as the backdrop. The UK government advises, sure, but nobody accidentally stumbles into an unprecedented second state visit.
And we know the Crown can say no when it wants to. Heck, Harry wasn't even invited on the family jet to Balmoral when the Queen was dying. So spare me the idea that Charles is some powerless hostage to Keir Starmer's diary.
So congratulations, Your Majesty. In 2025, you didn't just lose the room, you made a lot of Canadians realize they're ready to walk out of it.
Now coming in at number 2, we have Pierre Poilievre and the Conservative Party, or as 2025 would call it, it's complicated.
This time last year, Pierre Poilievre is convinced he's about to move into 24 Sussex Drive. He's got a 30-point lead, Canadians are fed up with the Liberals, and everyone's calling him the next Prime Minister, like it's already printed on the stationery.
All he has to do is make Canadians feel like he actually likes the country he wants to run. Low bar. But then the real campaign starts, and every time he opens his mouth, it's the same sermon. Canada is broken. Our cities are disasters. Our institutions are corrupt. Our neighbors are lazy. He talks about this place like he's trying to convince people to flee, not vote.
Instead of saying, here's how we fixed it, he just keeps telling Canadians how awful we are, how stupid our choices have been, how everything we built is trash, and only he can rescue us from the flaming rubble.
It's the same imported formula we've watched south of the border for years. Humiliate the country, crank up the rage, promise people that if you are angry enough, magic will somehow happen.
The difference? Canadians actually notice. Unlike our, let's say, less cautious American neighbors, we saw where that road leads and hit the brakes.
You could feel the shift. At first, people are nodding along going, yeah, groceries are too expensive. Housing is brutal. But after the 20th speech about how Canada is a hopeless failure, the mood changes to, okay, if you hate this place so much, why exactly do you want to be in charge of it?
And that's the moment that the bottom falls out of everything. The daily attack stops sounding like tough love and starts sounding like contempt. Every word dripping with this weird resentment toward the country that he's courting.
And when the debates finally happen, Mark Carney is up there talking about what he wants to build, and Poilievre is still yelling that everything is garbage.
Then, election night hits. Not only does Poilievre lose the election, he loses his own seat. The guy who thought he was on a coronation tour gets punted out of Parliament by his own voters.
And instead of taking the hint, what does he do? He runs to the safest riding in the country for a by-election. Deep blue conservative farm country where a cardboard cutout with a blue logo could win by 60 points.
He wins, of course, but everyone knows what this is. It's not a comeback. It's more like bragging you won a hockey game where the other team didn't show up and half your fans left at intermission.
Meanwhile, the cracks inside the party start to show. 2 conservative MPs cross the floor to the Liberals. Another quits altogether. And these aren't fringe backbenchers. These are people saying, on record, I didn't sign up for this.
And instead of asking, hey, why are people fleeing? Or looking in the mirror for 5 seconds, he doubles down and blames Trudeau. He just can't leave Trudeau alone. It's like Trump and Obama. He's obsessed.
Rumors of more floor crossings and unrest hang over the party. And with the leadership review coming up, the question isn't, is Pierre popular with his base? It's, do we want to keep losing because this guy can't talk to the rest of the country without insulting it?
And that's the breakup. The Conservatives didn't suddenly grow a conscience. They just finally realized that a man who clearly resents Canada is a terrible salesman for the job of Prime Minister. So yeah, number 2 on our list goes to the relationship between Pierre Poilievre and the party that built him. Because 2025 is the year some Conservatives started to figure out what the rest of the country saw months earlier. You can't lead a country you clearly don't respect. At some point, the country just walks away.
And that brings us to the number 1 breakup of 2025, Canada and the United States.
Now, not in the we're storming the border kind of sense, more like quietly canceling the Florida condo, blocking the ex on social, and discovering the rest of the world has beaches too.
Look at what happened this year. Trump slapped tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum, threatened autos, used a tiny amount of fentanyl as an excuse to declare an emergency at our border, and used our digital tax and Ronald Reagan's words as an excuse to blow up our trade talks.
And then, Canadians responded in the only language Washington actually pays attention to: money. We stopped coming. Cross-border travel took a beating. Border crossings by car and air dropped sharply, and studies showed Canadians were planning fewer U.S. trips, specifically during Trump's second term. Some routes saw more than a 50% decline.
Now, U.S. tourism groups said that even a 10% drop would mean billions in lost spending, and Canadians blew right past that. We were sending our vacation money to Mexico, Europe, or just keeping it in Vancouver, Cape Breton, or Quebec City instead.
Add in the new American security rules, talk of scraping social media histories, more invasive questioning, more people being detained at the border, and suddenly Florida, Arizona, and Vegas don't feel like a relaxing winter escape anymore.
And it's not just tourism. On trade, Trump keeps ranting about how America gets nothing from Canada and threatening to walk away from CUSMA. So, while Trump doubles down on tariffs, Carney and the Liberals are creating new deals with Europe, Asia, South America, literally anyone that doesn't treat us like a doormat.
Basically sending a clear message. If you want to be unpredictable and hostile, that's your choice. We're done building our entire future around you.
And here's the big mental shift. For decades, Canadians believed we had to keep the relationship nice, no matter what. Smile, comply, hope Washington stays in a good mood.
But 2025 shattered that illusion. We learned that we do have leverage. We can walk away from trips. We can move our trade. We can say, you don't get to threaten our sovereignty and still expect the same loyalty.
2025 was the year that Canada finally stopped pretending that this was a healthy relationship. We'll trade when it makes sense, but they're just not the center of our universe anymore.
So that'll do it. That's our top 5 breakups of 2025. The king, the bourbon, the hockey legend, the conservative leader, and the neighbor who forgot how to act like one.
It's Canada saying, if you treat us like we're weak, well, we're going to quietly prove you wrong.
So in 2026, that's the energy we're taking forward. Trade with people who respect us. Support leaders who tell us the truth. Spend money in places that don't threaten us, and stop putting celebrities, politicians, or brands on pedestals just because we grew up with their posters on the wall.
So let us know in the comments, which breakup did you cheer for this year, and what breakup do you want to see in 2026?
And if you're done with this nonsense and you're sticking with Canada, hit like and share this with one politically exhausted friend. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss what we've got coming this year.
Happy New Year, everyone! This year we're done apologizing for existing. We're backing Canada, setting boundaries, and cutting loose the people and countries that drag us down. And that's how we're starting 2026.
Thanks for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow.